We're now in study session 5, the mind-body problem. In this study session, we will explore the concept of mind-body problem. We will examine theories of mind-body and some of the merits and demerits of these theories. Similarly, we will also discuss the concept of problem of other minds, as well as different theories propounded by philosophers to explain the concept. When you have studied this session, you should be able to explain the mind-body problem, discuss at least 2 of the theories of mind, and point out the issues involved in the problem of other minds. Conceptions on the mind-body. Generally, most human cultures, societies, and traditions have a rather dualistic conception of the human person. In this understanding, the human person is made up of the body and soul, or the mind. This is represented in, for instance, ancient Greek culture, where the atomists believe that the soul is made up of fine atomic particles, bottled up in the body as long as the person lives. At death, however, the soul escapes from its imprisonment in the body. In the Jewish tradition, the life of the soul is contained in the blood. For this reason, the blood is drained out before the body of an animal can be eaten. However, the 18th century modern philosopher René Descartes is regarded as the first to present a systematic account of the person with regards to the content of the human person. For Descartes, the human person is made up of the body and the mind. The body is material, physical, extended, that is, occupying space, divisible, destructible, and fundamentally a substance. According to Descartes, the body is not responsible for human thinking, and so he calls it a non-thinking substance. The mind, on the other hand, is not only a substance like the body, but unlike the body, it is not material, unextended, invisible, and therefore indestructible. For Descartes, the essence of the mind is to think. He therefore refers to it as unextended thinking substance. The mind-body problem therefore emerges from this conception of the mind and the body. For the mind and the body are not only opposed in categories, but for Descartes, they interact. Hence, his position is called interactionist dualism. The mind-body problem can be understood at 2 levels. The first level is a conception of the mind as an unextended substance. For anything to be a substance, it must be capable of independent existence. And to access this feature of independent existence of a substance, such a thing must be separable from other substances. Put differently, such a thing must be individuatable. Now, if the mind is not locatable in space or unextended, how is it possible to individuate it among other substances? It may be regarded as a non-substantial substance, an immaterial matter, a contradiction in terms. The second level of the mind-body problem is, how can 2 substances of opposed ontological categories interact? In other words, an immaterial, unextended, invisible substance called the mind cannot interact with a material, extended physical body. Although Descartes attempted, in anticipation of this problem, to propose a thesis of the pineal gland, it did not help matters much. For if the pineal gland is the meeting point of the mind and the body, the question will still be raised: what is the nature of this bridge? Theories of mind. In an attempt to resolve the mind-body problem, philosophers have proposed a number of theories. The theories can be grouped under two broad headings: dualism and monism. Dualism. As mentioned above, interactionist dualism or dualist interactionism is perhaps the most popular theory of mind, as it is found represented in nearly all human cultures. However, professional discussions in the philosophy of mind regard Cartesian interactionism as a official position, as it is considered in some quarters as the most systematic representation of the mind-body relation. For Descartes, the mind is characterized by immaterialism, invisibility, unextendedness, and a thinking substance. In this sense, every human act of thinking, deliberating, desiring, wishing and hoping, doubting and pondering, all take place in the mind as forms of consciousness. The Cartesian interactionism, however, has it that the mind and the body interact at the points behind the brain, which Descartes called the pineal gland. Attempts to understand and analyze Cartesian dualism brought to the fore the first expression of what is known as a mind-body problem, which is, how can two opposed ontological categories interact? This question stands over and above the problem of characterizing the mind, in Descartes' words, as an unextended thinking substance. Occasionalism. This can be referred to as one of the more popular traditional accounts of the development of the mind-body debate in the 17th century, which is the theory that God alone is a true causal agent, in whose operations are included all the phenomena of nature. According to the story usually told, some early modern thinkers committed to Descartes' philosophy and to mind-body dualism in particular were unable to explain how two substances so radically different in essence could interact. Since unextended thoughts and matter as pure extension have absolutely nothing in common, and thus no means by which they might be able to engage one another, it becomes inexplicable and even inconceivable how a body can be the cause of mental events, thoughts, sensations, and how a mind can cause motions in the body with which it is united. When confronted with such a problem, the story runs, Cartesians asserted that no such interaction rarely takes place. Rather, what appears to be true causal interaction is really God's constant activity in producing thoughts on the occasion of certain bodily motions and motions in the body on the occasion of certain volitions in the mind. It is clear that those 17th century thinkers who did have recourse to a thoroughgoing occasionalism did so not only in order to account for apparent mind-body interaction, but to account for apparent causal relations among bodies as well. Nicholas Milbranch, for example, in both The Search After Truth and Dialogues on Metaphysics, argues that it is no more conceivable how one body can move another than how a body can be a true cause of thoughts in the soul, or how volitions in the soul can move the body. However, some Cartesians call upon occasionalism only in order to answer questions about interaction between bodies. Louis de Lafarge, one of the more important expositors and followers of Descartes in the mid-17th century, says that the will can well be the efficient cause of all the things we notice, to depend on it in this alliance between mind and body, although He thus reduced mind-body interaction to mutual correspondence and concourse and reciprocal dependence in the states of the two substances. Epiphenomenalism. This too is a version of dualism, rejecting reduction of the mental to the physical. Unlike other dualist theories, however, it denies that conscious mental states are ever causes. It is never pain that makes us wince, nor anger that makes us shout. These are the effects of certain neurostate. Put differently, epiphenomenalism is a theory concerning the relation between the mental and physical realms, regarded as radically different in nature. The theory holds that only physical states have causal power and that mental states are completely dependent on them. The mental realm for epiphenomenalists is nothing more than a series of conscious states which signify the occurrence of states of the nervous system, but which play no causal role. For example, my feeling sleepy does not cause my yawning. Rather, both the feeling and the yawning are effects of an underlying neural state. Mental states are real, and in being conscious, we are more than merely physical organisms. Nevertheless, all our experiences, thoughts, and actions are determined by our physical natures. Mental states are actually as smoke from a machine seems to be, mere side effects making no difference to the cause of nature. What has led philosophers to propose a theory which is such an affront to common sense? The rise early in the 17th century of the conception of the physical realm as a closed system in which the forces of material nature are the only influences that determine the course of events, when combined with the naturalistic view that human beings are a part of material nature and governed by its laws, seems to leave no room for a realm of mental states having a role in fixing the course of events. Instances of reference to the concept epiphenomenalism leading to the development of the theory can be traced. To begin, the term epiphenomenon, meaning a secondary symptom, was first applied to consciousness in 1890 by William James, but the position which he was attacking had already existed for some time. Simmias, in Plato's Phaedo, asserts that body stands to mind as a musical instrument stands to its harmonia. If we interpret the latter as meaning of the music produced by an instrument, Simmias' theory has epiphenomenalist overtones. In the 18th century, Charles Bonnet discussed in his Essai de Psychologie, 1735, a theory according to which the soul is a mere spectator of the movements of its body, though it believes itself to be the author of them, while the body performs of itself all that series of actions which constitutes life. In all, for epiphenomenalism to be a doctrine distinct from both dualism and materialism, it must involve a very strong conception of causality as productive power or efficacy. No Humean or regularity theory of causation will be sufficient. For the epiphenomenalist admits that many conscious states are regularly followed by other conscious states or by actions, yet denies that the former ever causes the latter. Monism. One of the most popular monistic conceptions of mind is behaviorism. Behaviorism refers to the movements in psychology and philosophy that emphasized the outward behavioral aspect of thought and dismissed the inward experiential and sometimes the inner procedural aspect as well. Monism is a movement harking back to the methodological proposals of John B. Watson, who coined the name. Watson's 1912 manifesto proposed abandoning introspectionist attempts to make consciousness a subject of experimental investigation, only to focus instead on behavioral manifestations of intelligence. B.F. Skinner later hardened behaviorist strictures to exclude inner physiological processes along with inward experiences as items of legitimate psychological concern. From the foregoing, it is evident that behaviorists view the mind as behavior. In other words, the behaviorist believes that every form of consciousness can be explained in terms of behavior. For instance, anger consciousness must be reducible to anger behavior. Hunger consciousness must be explained in terms of hunger behavior. Love consciousness can only be understood through love behavior, to mention but a few. By this understanding, to access a given state of mind, whether anger or hunger or love or resentment or welcoming attitude, what is needed is to exert an adequate stimuli and the person would elicit a given form of behavior. What this means is that any form of consciousness must be identified in a form of corresponding behavior, and the absence of any such corresponding behavior obviously indicates the absence of the form of consciousness. Identity theory. The identity theory of mind holds that states and processes of the mind are identical to states and processes of the brain. Strictly speaking, it need not hold that the mind is identical to the brain. Idiomatically, we do use "she has a good mind" and "she has a good brain" interchangeably, but we would hardly say "her mind weighs 50 ounces." As such, it could be seen that identifying mind and brain is a matter of identifying processes and perhaps states of the mind and brain. Consider an experience of pain, or of seeing something, or of having a mental image. The identity theory of mind is to the effect that these experiences are just brain processes, not merely correlated with brain processes. Some philosophers, however, hold that though experiences are brain processes, they nevertheless have fundamental, non-physical, physical properties, sometimes called qualia. Identity theorists often describe themselves as materialist or physicalist. The identity theory dates back to U.T. Place's Is Consciousness a Brain Process, published in 1958, and H. Figel, The Mental and the Physical, 1958. In his theory of the mind-body relation, Place spoke of constitution rather than identity. One of his examples is "this table is an old packing case." Another is "lightning is an electric discharge." Indeed, the latter example was spoken of by Place in his earlier paper, The Concept of Heat, 1954, in which he took issue with Riley's behaviorism as it applied to concepts of consciousness, sensation, and imagery. It should be noticed that Place was using the word logical in the way that it was used at Oxford at the time. Place's very original and pioneering paper was written after discussions at the University of Adelaide with J.J.C. Smart, C.B. Martin. Smart at the time argued for a behaviorist position in which mental events were elucidated purely in terms of hypothetical propositions about behavior, as well as first-person reports of experiences which Gilbert Ryle regarded as avowals. Avowals were thought of as mere pieces of behavior, as if saying that one had a pain was just doing a sophisticated set of wins. Avowals were thought of as mere pieces of behavior, as if saying that one had a pain was just doing a sophisticated set of wins. Smart saw Riley's theory as friendly to physicalism, though that was not part of Riley's motivation. Smart hoped that the hypotheticals would ultimately be explained by neuroscience and cybernetics. Being unable to refute place and recognizing the unsatisfactoriness of Riley's treatment of inner experience, to some extent recognized by Riley himself, Smart soon became converted to Place's view. In this, he was also encouraged and influenced by Figel's the mental and the physical. Figel's wide-ranging contribution covered many problems, including those connected with intentionality, and he introduced a useful term, nomological danglers, for the dualist's supposed mental-physical correlations. Let us now take a look at the problem of other minds. The problem of other minds has to do with the question as to whether other people have minds. Of course, it is not difficult or problematic for an individual person to know that he or she has a mind. At least, every individual knows that he or she deliberates, wonders, ponders, has memory, and these are functions of the mind or mental attributes of the human person. Furthermore, Furthermore, every individual feels pain, that is, experiences pain sensations, feels anger, entertains fear, and so on. However, though these are ascribable to one's own self, it is very problematic to ascribe it to others. For instance, how do I know that others feel pain without, for instance, pain behavior? Or that others deliberate or think while sitting quietly without manifesting any corresponding behavior? In short, how can I explain or know that other persons have minds? This is particularly so as the only way to show or to explain the fact of others having minds is to argue from the point of view of inference, that is, from the fact that I have a mind, I infer that others have minds. But it will be clear here that this inference cannot be conclusively established truth. In other words, is it not possible that I have what others do not have? It is also argued sometimes that we can establish the truth of others having minds from the fact that they behave in particular ways when stimulated. The problem of other minds cannot be discussed without reference to the mind-body dualism of Descartes, because it is this mind-body problem created by Cartesian dualism which, in Richard Rorty's words, have intertwined to produce tangle with other related problems. And one of such related problems is the problem of other minds. Of course, the problem of other minds is not only whether other people have minds, but it goes beyond to include the problem of our knowledge of other minds. As A. H. B. Allen puts it, the passionately determined belief that there are other minds is of a general character. There is combined with it a healthy practical skepticism whether we can ever know for certain in particular cases what others are thinking, just as they must be equally uncertain about us. J. L. Austin captures the problem in clearer terms when he said, I may say I believe other minds exist, but that does not mean that I know them all. He went on to explain that in philosophical discourse, the existence of our alleged belief is not challenged, but the existence of our alleged knowledge is challenged. Philosophers have not all subscribed to the same rigid analysis of the problem of other minds. Hence, several theories have been propounded to explain this problem. Three of such theories will be discussed. The analogical theory. This theory is closely linked or associated with behaviorism. The theory holds that each of us derives his knowledge of other minds from the observation of other human organisms. I observe that there are a number of bodies which resemble mine and concludes that each of these bodies is animated by a mind more or less like me. I myself am a behaving body, and I know when I behave in certain ways that I am thinking certain kinds of thoughts. Arguing from analogy, when I perceive similar manifestations on the part of another body, I assume that the body is likewise animated, that is, feeling and thinking in such way as I know from my experience. The linguistic theory. This theory holds that one's evidence for the existence of other minds is derived primarily from the understanding of language. Language here is used in a wide sense to include not only speeches and writings, but also signals such as waving a red flag and gestures such as beckoning and pointing. The suggestion here is that our evidence for the existence of other minds comes from communication situations. The intuitive theory. This theory maintains that each of us has a direct and intuitive apprehension of other minds, just as we have of our own, or that at least we intuitively apprehend some other minds on some occasions, for instance, in a conversation or a quarrel. However, some advocates of this theory proceeded to take a step further by saying that the problem was misstated. To such advocates, instead of assuming that every man would first have a direct introspective awareness of himself before going on to justify his beliefs concerning other selves, what comes first in the historical order is consciousness of one's neighbor. Consciousness of oneself comes up only later after considerable mental development, and, even in some cases, say in the idiot or primitive stage, it never comes up at all. The opposition here is that when I do come to know my own mind, I only come to know it by contrast with my neighbor's mind, which I must have already known. Study session summary. In this study session, we examined the meaning and nature of the mind-body problem. This problem arises as the result of certain views of the French philosopher René Descartes. We noted that the problem involves answering the questions: what is the fundamental nature of mind and body? And how are mind and body related? We made an attempt at representing and examining what is understood as the problem of other minds. We examined some of these theories. We concluded by bringing to the fore some of the intractable challenges inherent in what is now referred to as the problem of other minds. And with that, we come to the end of study session 5. Thank you for listening.